People don't like to have uncomfortable discussions, whether it's here in South Carolina in our little bubble of Hammond School or all around the world. Today, everyone is so distracted by modern technology that no one is really aware of the situations and the real issues we're having here in our own community. And so I'll start by telling you a little bit of a story. There was a girl from Columbia, South Carolina, here, 17 years old. Thank you. 17 years old. She was a daughter to a single mother, and her mother one night decided that she was going to go out on a date. And so the 17-year-old girl was really excited because she was going to be home alone, so she decided to text this boy that she had been talking to, who had reached out to her from her school, and she didn't really know him very well, but she was excited and texted him like, hey, like my mom's gone, like I'm home alone, like would you like to do anything? And he responded right away like, yes, I'll come pick you up. She was very excited, got ready, dressed all up for him, and he came over and picked her up in a truck, seemed like a normal date, and he eventually kept driving, pulled into a parking lot, pulled her out of the car, and gave her to two men, and the men pulled her into a van, and she was gone, down into 5 Points of Columbia. There are a lot of false truths going on in our community of Columbia, South Carolina, and all over the world, and no one's talking about them. Even your history teachers have been lying to you technically since the 3rd grade. You learned that slavery ended with the Emancipation Proclamation and the Civil War, and because the North did win, even though some, counter that, and that the North did win, and that slavery did become illegal. But slavery is not dead in the United States. It is not dead overseas, and you've heard stories, but that doesn't really affect you, so why bother? But it also is not dead in your backyard. And we need to do something about this. So I stand before you, and I'm bringing to light human trafficking or modern-day slavery in America. And my process that I'm going to use is that I don't know if you've heard the movie Pay It Forward, but it's about a young boy who decides that he wants to make the world a better place. And the way he's going to do that is that he's going to tell 3 people, and he's going to act out in 3 random acts of kindness to 3 different people. And hopefully tell those people that, hey, pay that forward, hey, do that nice thing to them, and eventually they will do it to 3 other people, and they will do it to 3 other people, and eventually it'll affect the world, and millions of people will be affected, and it'll make the world just a better place. And so I stand before you, and I'm taking the first step and going to discuss human trafficking, something that is not discussed on day-to-day life. And hopefully you will be able to have these discussions and pay it forward, no matter what you take from the speech, whatever little fact or information you find interesting. Please pay it forward. Please start the conversation. Because the issue with human trafficking is that it's a low-risk, high-reward for the buyers, because no one knows and no one's having the discussion that it exists. So the buyers keep buying because they know that they're never going to be caught, because there's no one that's going to try to end this. And so as long as buyers are still buying, there's going to still be a market for it. So what we have to do is we have to bring awareness, and then buyers will be scared, and they won't purchase these products anymore. And once the market's gone, then the demand is gone, and there's no sellers left. And by doing this, there's an easy transition to end human trafficking, and this is the first step is education. So just to give a little background, there's actually 2 different types of human trafficking. There's sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And sex trafficking is more of what we think of when we think of it in the United States. It would be the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a person for the purposes of commercial sex act. And this is what can be happening in our backyard. It is a very serious situation, and probably what you would think of when you think of human trafficking, but it's not the only option. It's also labor trafficking is involved, which is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining of a person for labor services for the purposes of subjection to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt, bondage, or slavery. And this also affects us, because you have to think about where your things are purchased from. Where are you purchasing that? You get that cute shirt that's a little bit cheaper from a Chinese website. Like, you have to think about where you purchase your items of your clothing, because it could come from a child laborer who's not getting paid for anything, and there's actually serious issues going on with that. So labor trafficking isn't as big of a deal in the United States, but we are the ones who are actually buying stuff. So we are the buyers for labor trafficking. And this is only a growing industry. In 2004, in the United States, there were 45,000 reported cases of human trafficking. And by 2015, there were 25 million reported cases of victims in human trafficking. It is a $150 billion industry, and it's just 3 times the size of Apple, and no one's talking about it. And so the issue is that this is not even the number of victims, like the actual number, because people are so scared to come forward because the people that control them, the buyers and the sellers, are telling them different things that they could, if they come forward, they'll be arrested for prostitution. If they come forward, they're going to be the ones who are going to go to jail, and that their life is going to be ruined. And so they feel like they're guilty and they're responsible for something, so that they're not going to come forward, and they're scared to come forward. And by raising awareness and talking about it, people will realize that it's not their fault that they're into this. So this is not their issue, that they were sold into this and they were manipulated by these buyers and sellers. And so the human traffickers use 3 main tactics to to be effective in human trafficking. And that's force, fraud, and coercion. And force is kind of what you think of when you think of human trafficking. It's going to be like the kidnapping, the raping, the confinement. It's the way more extreme tactic to use, which is less so happening in the United States, except for in very extreme cases. The stuff that you'll see in day-to-day life that you don't realize is actually happening is the fraud and coercion. The fraud is people promising things like green cards or marriage or a better life, and manipulating people to think that, oh my goodness, like, if I just perform this one act, like, my life is going to be so much better. And they trick you into that, and then you're stuck in the situation. And so fraud is a huge issue here in the United States. And then also coercion with like tactics of threatening their families and saying that there's going to be like follow-up issues if they don't follow the rules. And there are actually 3 different types of actual traffickers here. There's the Romeo, CEO, and the gorilla. And the Romeo is going to be the sweet talker. This is a lot of the cases that you will see here. There'll be instances of they make you fall in love with them. This will be a man or woman, either way, that will gradually come towards you, develop a relationship with you, normally make you dependent on them. This has even grown immensely more with like technology. You become reliant on them, and then eventually they make you promises of maybe marriage or children, and eventually you become so dependent on them. And then what happens after that honeymoon stage is over, they flip on you. And they end up saying, well, if you really love me, you'll perform this commercial sex act for me because we need to provide for our family. If you really love me, you'll become part of this like community, and you'll get your friends involved with this commercial thing. And eventually, on and on and on, the Romeo ends up turning and becoming more of someone who's going to take advantage of you and doesn't really love you, but you're so dependent on them and you have no other option. And then you have the CEO, who is someone who is an employer who will take upon them as their job to, like, especially people in the music industry and modeling agency, they'll find people who look like they might be a little bit more sensitive and try to, like, convert them and be like, hey, if you come with me, like, I'll help you out. And they become their employer and they control their finances, so they're dependent on them. And then what they'll end up doing is they take in you and they'd be like, oh, it's okay, like, you can go strip on this, like, you can go strip, and that's just the first step. That's what everyone does if they're part of the music industry. Like, it's okay, that's part of it. And then they make it more extreme, like, it's okay to go provide this commercial sex act, like, that's just part of it. And then you're so reliant on them, you can't speak out because you feel like you're guilty, and you feel like you're the one who's been trapped in this situation, and there's no way out because you actually committed crimes, but you weren't the one at fault because you were forced into it. And then you have the gorilla, who normally starts out as a Romeo or a CEO. And the gorilla is going to be something, when you think of the movie Taken, that's what the gorilla is. It's the underground, like, chain of what's going on, where people are the more aggressive. It's what they do, the kidnapping, the people that are sold and confined, and it's just like the huge sex ring that's going on. And these people that are going to be aggressive. And normally you get Romeo and CEOs that work for gorillas, or Romeo and CEOs who become gorillas. And so now you've got to think about, what can I do about it? You probably don't think you know a single one of these people in your life, but you actually really might, and these people might just be passing by on the day-to-day life. So there's things you have to look out for. And these are like red flags. You have to look out for high security measures at locations, like boarded up windows, poor physical health, paranoia, especially involving the cops, a lost sense of time, people who can't speak for themselves, and people who work long hours with, it seems like, not many pay. But there's a lot more. These are not all red flags. These does not mean that human trafficking is going on. And it also doesn't, there's a lot more things that can indicate human trafficking. But what we have to do is just bring awareness to this matter and try to make change. And so if you see one of these red flags, there's a hotline. If you just take a nice little Google, you can look up the national hotline for human trafficking. You can report it, you can ask them questions, and it's just an easy way to really try to make a difference. And once you hear this, you will start noticing things in your community. You will start noticing gas stations. In Columbia, we're in between Atlanta and Charlotte. This is happening all along our highways. And so we really need to pay attention and make a difference. And to finish on the story that I told at the beginning, luckily the girl, 17-year-old girl, whose story was not publicized because she was a minor, was her mom found her, her mom felt suspicious, came home very early from the date, went and was confused why she wasn't there, ended up tracking her phone, phone calling, called the cops. Eventually, somehow, there was a huge arrest down in South Carolina in 5 Points. They found her, found out that she was supposed to be transported to Charlotte the next day, would have been gone forever, her life over, just because she tried to go after a Romeo boy at her high school who was involved with their whole entire family involved in a huge ring. It's people you would never expect, people you would never, people that are just all around you today, and it's happening here in Columbia on our own side. And so let's make a difference. Let's talk about it. Let's just maybe generate discussion one day at lunch. So pay it forward. Thank you.